here's what, once you understood natural law, that God gave you, just based on your individual humanity, the right to self-government, the right to bear arms for self-defense. Does that phrase in there say the right to bear arms for hunting? No. So anytime someone says, well, we want to protect the hunters, call it what it is. That's just a blatant lie. They've made everybody so afraid to call the truth, and made you try to cower down. We have the right to defend ourselves from the government. Should the government be better armed than the American people? No. That's a problem. Should the local police departments be better armed than the American people? No.
See, that's the problem when you have an issue. Where do you go to get that help? You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
If you have a problem, what agency do you go see? Today is a good example in Commissioner's Court. There's a guy down there that has an issue of a guy creating theft on one of those cell towers. You might have heard that. He has pleaded his case at the local city level. No law enforcement will take it. He's got cameras, got the pictures of the guy doing everything, and nobody doing any action to help him. Trespassing. What he's doing. And so now he brings it to our local district attorney's office. They do nothing with it. So he's before Commissioner's Court today pleading his case. Where is somebody to help me? Where do I go next? I don't know where to go. We have a guy that's damaging property, and it had to do with cell towers, and the lines went down for a day and a half. And anyhow, he's pleading his case to Commissioner's Court today. Our district attorney won't even help him. And now they've lost the evidence he gave them. They can't seem to find the tapes. They can't seem to find anything else.
Somebody's got somebody in there.
So, and he calls the man's name and everything in court, but it's, you know, and his neighbor, more or less, is doing it. But he's begging for help. And that's what I'm saying. When all of us people have a problem, we think we should go to local enforcement, and they're all in it together.
Yes.
And they got to go to Channel 13.
Yeah. At this point in time, your best alternative is to try to get as many people, the individual citizen, to understand your situation. Because despite what the federal government believes, or the Obama administration, or some of these politicians, inherent into the American persona is the right to freedom. And most American people instinctively understand that. That's why millions of people come here every year. They want freedom. So once you explain rights to them, they're like, yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense. So when it gets on the news that somebody's rights are being violated, what you're seeing now is becoming very effective. People are circumventing the mainstream propaganda, and they're going to the internet and some of these other news agencies, and they're putting it out there, and people are responding. So when they're suspending a kid from school for a toy gun, guess what? Millions of people across the country are calling that school board, and they're saying, what is wrong with you? The pressure is so intense that they back off. So now people have found another avenue. Lawyers are not the answer to everything. And in fact, they're the problem, because they've been trained on a false premise. And there's very few out there that will argue the constitutionality of things. That's one of the nice things about Ted Cruz. He's been grounded in constitutional law and the understanding of the founding principles, and he's argued it before the Supreme Court. So he understands what he's talking about. He's not one of these guys that tries on precedent. He's going straight to the people and saying, listen, this is your freedom, and you're going to lose it. Stand up. Stand up now. Okay. So yes.
So Jim, and I've always said this, you'll hear like on Obamacare, they'll say it's the law of the land, right? Okay. Well, so was slavery.
Yes.
That was law of the land. So was the internment of the Japanese in World War II. So was outlawing marriage between races. That was law of the land. So, but somehow we've conditioned people to believe today that because it's law that you just go to sleep and let it happen.
Correct. One of the things that you will not hear them argue in terms of Obamacare, is it constitutional? They change the wording, they change the phrase, and they say, Congress passed it, the President signed it, the Supreme Court adjudicated it. Listen to what they didn't say. They didn't say it's constitutional. They said these three bodies said it was okay. But if you listen to John Roberts, what was his commentary on Obamacare? His commentary was, I have to find a way to justify what Congress did. That was his public commentary. How much did that get in the news? Is that his job? No. His job is to determine if it's constitutional. And he should have been impeached based on that.
We got a lot of people to impeach, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah, clean house, right?
Because it fundamentally goes to this premise. These people do not understand the oath that they took. They don't understand the Constitution that they're supposed to defend. And by doing such, they've asked for our public trust to defend our rights. They are public servants. We are not the servant. We are the master. They are the servant. Well, ask any politician if they think they're public servants. You'll see a look on their face that, look, it will tell you that they think you're crazy. Okay?
They write the laws for us, but not for them.
Correct.
Mine is when you walk into a room of politicians and we're ordinary people, why don't they come shake our hand? Why do we always have to shake their hand?
Exactly.
That's a good point.
No, you never see them come to you as Joe Blow, say, hi, how you doing? I'm so-and-so.
Correct.
And if I do that and get in office, you remind me of that. Because I don't want to be like that.
Well, and that's,
we serve you.
and that's what we've gotten away from, is we've allowed the politicians to be so separate for so long that they're in that bubble of Washington or Austin or wherever, and they say, well, we're different. The Constitution, that's old stuff. You know, this is a modern age. The thing that they lose is the Constitution wasn't about technology. What it was about is our individual rights and liberties. That's a fundamental difference that politicians, all you've got to do is read the Constitution. There's not anything in there that says anything about technology. It's all about you believe your rights came from God and that you can express your individual freedoms how God deems fit.
Politicians have become rulers, our elected officials have become rulers instead of servants. They've switched that.
Well, and also, Jim,
yes.
I think when George Washington left, didn't he have a nice little speech talking about beware of the parties?
Yes.
Because it seems now there's a loyalty to the party, and so you don't hear, you'll hear, you know, Democrat Party, Libertarian Party, Republican Party, but the word Constitution is nowhere to be found.
Right.
I mean, I've seen even some of the clubs, Republican clubs, talk about, you know, we stand for Republican principles and stuff, but nowhere do they say anything about the Constitution.
Correct.
You know, and that's troubling to me.
Yes.
You know, because then their allegiance, when they take the oath, nowhere did it say. When I signed up in the military, it did not say I swear allegiance to the Republican Party or Democrat Party.
No.
You know, it talked about the Constitution.
Correct.
And they take a similar oath for elected officials.
And you look at one of the things that they try to do is one of the last institutions that actually had honor and integrity and allegiance to the Constitution was the military. Look at over the last 10, 15 years, even under Bush, what have they progressively done to the military? They've tied their hands, they've ridiculed them for winning wars. All right? We've been in Iraq and Afghanistan for 10 years. How many news stories come back about all the good deeds that the American military does in Afghanistan or Iraq? I asked my wife this the other day. What do we as Americans know about the culture in Iraq and Afghanistan that we didn't know 10 or 12 years ago? When we were going through the Vietnam War, what did we know about Southeast Asia? The news covered everything. We knew everything about Southeast Asia. We knew everything about Ho Chi Minh, all of it. Look at what they've done. They've marginalized the military. Why? Because these are the last bastion of people that sacrifice for their country based on honor and a belief in American exceptionalism. And if you hold them up, you continue to hold them up, people are inspired by that.
Well, you see that right now. You see that today, what's happening with the World War II veterans. I mean, that is the most shameful act to block the greatest generation from having access to a monument paid for by private funds. And that's open air, and they actually bought barriers and have guards there, and they're making it very difficult. And these guys are in a wheelchair, you know, they're dying.
They still got in because of their attitude.
Yeah, but they shouldn't have to, right? They shouldn't have to.
And they constantly get
and no other president has done that. Even Clinton and Carter did not do that when they shut down in the 70s and the 90s. They didn't do that.
So now the government has become It has become, so the founders believed in not parties, but the difference between totalitarianism or complete control and anarchy. And when they did the Articles of Confederation, it was almost anarchy. So they had to drop back and say, okay, yeah, that was a nice idea, but it didn't give the federal government quite enough control. So then they came back and they argued and debated and went through, and they came back with the Constitution. It moved the bar a little bit closer to totalitarianism, a million miles farther away than we are today. So when they came back, they said, okay, this is the limits of what we're going to give the federal government to do. So now there's a principle called the Overton window, and it's a strategist tool. So what you do is you shift really radical one position, and you know that people resist change, and they're going to force you back. And so what happens is, over the course of the last 100 years, the progressives have been using that window, and they shift really far to the totalitarianism side, knowing that the American public is going to move back, but it's kind of like a spring. Once you stretch it out too far, it never goes all the way back to where it was. So they've been moving that bar farther and farther away from anarchy in the Constitution over to totalitarianism. The Republicans and the Democrats don't argue over the Constitution and freedom anymore. They argue over BS.
The margin, right?
Yeah, the margin.
Right.
We're marginally a little more free than the other guy. That's not the problem. You are so far off base that you shouldn't even be in the discussion anymore. Most of these guys are talking Venezuela-type socialism, and it's in your face, and nobody challenges them on it.
So that they've normalized it.
Yes, they've normalized it.
Yeah. So it's like gas prices. When they were jumping on Bush, when their gas prices went up to $2.50, $3, boy, there was an outcry. Today, we don't say nothing much, right?
It's accepted.
It's accepted. We've normalized that. That's how it is.
Yes?
This is maybe way off base.
No.
But when you were talking about the different parties and all, you know, we've got the Tea Party.
Yeah.
What has been in the news lately that really, again, irritates me, a better word, is they're calling the Tea Party, you know, they're just terrorists.
Yes.
And what are we going to do about that? That needs to be that's...
So you know where that comes from again? This gentleman right here.
Yes.
In here, what he says is your opponent. It is no longer necessary to argue ideals, principles, and fundamentals. Take your opponent, freeze them in time, ridicule them, destroy their character and their personality, attack that, kill the messenger, not the message. You never address the message. And that they do it over and over and over again. But what you saw is Ted Cruz, he went past the news media, he went past the Washington, D.C. bureaucrats, and he went to the American people and he said, listen, I want to talk to you guys. The only way he could do that was to do it for 21 hours, to do something so outrageous that he got national attention. John McCain ridiculed him, well, that wasn't really a filibuster. Who cares? What he said was the important thing.
Yeah.
And how he got his message out was very clever. Because it is so difficult to get your message out because of what this guy believes. All right.
Interesting. Interesting.
So, continue on. I could rattle on for that forever. The three most important natural rights. This gentleman was William Blackstone, another one of the founders' favorites. And what he said was, and these, the great natural rights, may be reduced to three principal or primary articles. The right of personal security, the right of personal liberty, and the right of private property. Because there is no other method known of compulsion or of abiding man's natural free will, but by infringement or diminution of one or the other of these rights. The preservation of these inviolate may justly be said to include the preservation of our civil immunities in their largest and most extensive sense. So what he's saying is, first, you, through God, have the right to protect your personal property. You have the right to protect it. You don't have to call 911 and wait 20, 30, 40 minutes for the police to show up. They are investigators. They investigate crime. They don't stop crime. You have the right and responsibility to protect your family, your friends, and your property. What does the George Zimmerman case try to attack? Many different things, but fundamentally your right to defend yourself. They want that taken away. Because then they can take away your personal liberty. If you can't defend yourself, you no longer may have the right to personal liberty and freedom. And then lastly, if you can't defend yourself, then they can take your property at will. Okay? So, what is your property? Is this your property?
Yes, my house, my home, my...
This is just paper.
It's not worth a lot.
It's not worth a lot. But what does it represent? Your work. Is your work your property? Yes. That is your human effort. They cannot take that. Do they take it? They steal it every day. And the fundamental worst way that they're stealing it now is they print money. Okay? This is not even worth the paper it's printed on. Okay? Costs more to print this than money's worth.
So what you're saying is they are purposely devaluing the value of that dollar so that you would eventually potentially collapse because you couldn't afford.
Yeah, once we get down to the last one that we covered last time, I'll give a little bit more information on the Federal Reserve and how money is created, because that's very important to understand. I want to emphasize right now, that is private property.
Michelle Obama said one day that we don't own our clothes, we don't own our house, we don't own our cars, we don't own our kids, we own nothing.
The government.
The government. And the American people don't pay attention what it means.
And if you don't pay the tax, they'll take it away, so basically you don't own it.
You know, it's ironic to me because I remember you guys remember the protests in the 60s and the 70s, you know, when they would say, you know, the hippies would say, I'm against the man, which is the government. And yet today, those same people are embracing the government.
What did they learn in the 60s? This is very important. They learned something in the 60s.
How does that?
The family unit, the American exceptionalism, that was the man. So what they did is you can't, what society sees as normal, you can't attack that violently. No. The majority of the people will rebel against that. So what they did is, all of a sudden, after they got out of jail, they infiltrated the educational system, the political system, and commerce. So if you look at most of the people around Obama, they're 60s radicals. He's mentored by 60s radicals.
And terrorists.
Eric Holder was a member of SDS.
Yep.
SDS is a radical 60s social Marxist group.
Yep.
Okay? They believed in wealth distribution and the collapse of the American economy.
But he's getting there, isn't he?
Oh, he's pushing it. Yes.
You know, Jim, one thing that I noticed as I talk to just people that I meet and that I know, and tell them even the least little bit of these principles and how they can be taken away from you. I've had more than one look at me with a puzzled expression on their face and say, but who would want to do that?
Well, Carla asked that very question. She says, how could an American citizen advocate what they're advocating knowingly and willingly? What it is now is back to what the founders believed. Virtue does not continue forever. Once you have power, once you have money, your American citizenship doesn't mean anything. They believe that they're going to be in power forever. They, in essence, actually are Lenin's definition of useful idiots, because once things would collapse, who do you think is going to be the first ones? Those guys that thought they were in power. Okay? There's only a handful that are going to be in power after that.
It happened in my country.
So, continue here a little bit.
The ordinary person just doesn't know.
No.
Until you take the milk and honey away, they're never going to know.
Well, and that's it, because we are so far above what was the poverty line now. So you don't have to fight for food, you don't have to fight for clothing, you don't have to worry about the weather.
No jet, no jet.
None of this stuff. So, in essence, what happens is, everybody's got comfortable and complacent, and they think, well, that's what I was born into, and that's what's going to continue.
Well, but because there's no education, these classes, this used to be taught in schools, all the way from first grade up. And then the 60s radicals, but it really started back in the 30s and 40s, we know that. But all of this education has been taken out of school, so people don't know this stuff.
People doesn't know the history of the war. Happened in many countries in South America, Central America, Europe. And Americans don't know history and don't know they can happen here, and it's happening.
And that's why they took that away from us.
Yes.
And the younger families are so involved in doing their own thing and making a living and chasing the kids, they don't take time to teach their children.
Well, and it's actually even gone fundamentally even beyond that now. So the president now has, do you know what he has on staff now? He started it in his re-election campaign in Chicago. He has behavioral scientists on his staff at the White House. Why would the president need a behavioral scientist?
To lie to people.
Not to lie to them,
Well,
to manipulate them. So what he's doing, and this is what happens is, in essence what they've learned is, what is the importance of big data? And they say metadata. Well, you can't learn anything about people from metadata. That's a lie. So metadata is, it tracks phone numbers and locations and things like that. May not have your name specifically attached to it, but they can correlate, they can, in essence, triangulate that back to a person. It's very easy.
And they've already tested it.
And then, well, actually, here's the case in point. Target. Does everybody shop at Target? Or have been there? Target is the master of big data. What they did is they hired a whole bunch of marketing statisticians. They started putting together this plan. Okay, so what kind of information do we want to collect to be able to predict how to sell more stuff? There was no inherent trying to manipulate the people. They wanted to actually increase their sales initially. Well, what they found out was their model was so accurate based on the information that they could collect, they could actually predict a lot of scary things about people. And here's one. So what really highlighted it was, to your point about people being busy and not paying attention, so the people that spend the most at a Target would be new families because they don't have a lot of time. They go to, they want a one-stop shop. The kids are crying, they got to get home, get some sleep, stuff like that. So what Target want to know is they want to know how to predict when new families are coming. So they can start sending marketing information to those people. Guess what? They're very accurate. And what it culminated in is one day, this very irate father of a 16-year-old girl comes into the store and says, I want to speak to the manager. And the manager goes, okay, what can I do for you? And he said, why are you sending my 16-year-old daughter pregnancy information stuff? Maternity clothes and things of that nature. She's not pregnant. Stop doing that. He was very, very irate. 2 weeks later, the man comes back into the store and he says, can I speak to the manager? The manager says, what can I do for you? He says, I owe you an apology, sir. He goes, for what? My daughter was pregnant. They predicted, based on her shopping habits, that she was pregnant. Didn't know her name, shipped marketing information to her address, knew more about her than her own father did. So, with this NSA facility in Utah, what do you think they can do if they're collecting every email, every cell phone call, every piece of IRS information, every piece of healthcare? What can they tell about you? And how can they use that to manipulate you based on your buying habits, your driving habits, anything? They can create models and predict the outcome. If I change this, what's going to happen to him? Or in a mass population. I want to change the state of Texas from red to blue. How do I do that? They use data and behavioral scientists to manipulate us. And most people are so busy that they don't realize they're being manipulated. They stop thinking.
Especially with the world media we have today.
Yes.
Complicit, you know?
Does it sound like to me a terrorist has got it pretty easy?
Yes. We have all of this information, and yet how many true terrorist attacks have we stopped? Actually, we've been attacked numerous times since the Patriot Act went into effect and we were collecting all this data. Why is that? We had the Fort Hood massacre. We have the bomber on the plane to Detroit. We have the terrorist attack in Boston. We have numerous things going on. Big data didn't collect that, tell us to stop that. Why? Because that's not what they're looking for. That is not what they're looking for.
Very interesting. Even when they're told by the Russians that that guy was a bad guy, they still didn't do it.
They were told in advance about the guy that tried to blow up the plane over Detroit. His own father went to the American embassy and said, hey, this guy's a problem. You might want to stop him. So, they are not, despite what they want, trust me, I used to be a big Republican, believed in George Bush and that whole cause. When I started actually waking up and thinking, there's a lot of lying going on, and I'm not a believer in either party anymore. I believe that the Republican Party is the easiest vehicle for us to take back over and get the country back on the right path. But that is a huge uphill battle because they do not understand our values or American exceptionalism anymore, or freedom. They don't care about it. They care about power and money.
So it's really the individuals you have to look at, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
So not the party, but you know, if there's an individual that has your values,
Yeah.
that's who you. I mean, I don't give to the RNC, but I might give to a Ted Cruz.
Individual candidates, correct? Yeah.
But you just said my parents are 83 years old, and those 2 words you just said, what they taught me as a child: power and money.
Yep. Yeah.
Republican Party, power and money.
Yeah.
That's what they always say over and over and over.
So, Karl Rove, how much money did he collect for the Republican, well, for his own PAC to help defeat Barack Obama? Do you know?
Billions.
$650 million. Are you telling me that with $650 million, he couldn't have got Mitt Romney elected if he wanted to?
Yes, you can.
What do you think he actually did with that money?
Took it some.
He enriched his own pocket, he's ingrained himself into the Republican Party, and he has advanced the Muslim Brotherhood into the Republican Party.
Yes.
So be cautious of where the money comes from and where it's going.
Same thing with that tax guy.
Yes, Grover Norquist.
Yeah.
He is actually forward. Did you know that Grover Norquist and Karl Rove were friends from the Republican Club in college? Very tight friends.
They are both into Muslim.
Yep.
Yes.
And what do you think they're in it for? The power and the money. Power and the money.
You know,
Anytime.
Jeff Bush now.
Yeah.
So Joe, let me play devil's advocate.
Sure.
If the Muslim Brotherhood is in our way of life,
yes,
not compatible, why would they? Because eventually they'll be taken out also. They're not going to spare a Karl Rove, you know, or Grover
So what it is the radical Islamists have been teamed up with the radical 60s for some time now. They've learned the same lesson. Go out and find yourself some useful idiots that can spread propaganda for you, normalize yourself, and you make it into the path. So what happens is they're funneling millions of dollars through Grover Norquist and Karl Rove. And the people that are doing it are educated in suits and ties. They're not wearing the headdress and the burqas and all that kind of stuff. They're wearing suits and ties. They're educated in our universities. But when you listen to what they say on tape, they advocate jihad. What is jihad? Jihad is not an individual path to enlightenment, despite what they might tell you. What do the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda have in common? What do they believe jihad is? Making death an art form. That is what they believe. That is what jihad is.
Kill us.
And they go to heaven by killing us because we are infidels. And the last fundamental, they believe in something similar to this guy. Radical Islam believes in the same thing this guy believes. The ends justify the means. If you lie to the face of your enemy, that's just going to get you to heaven that much quicker. So when they stand out there and they say, John McCain says the Muslim Brotherhood is not our enemy. No. They are secular. They have told him that. He's believed it. They're lying to his face. He's believing it. Because he's so ignorant, blinded by the power of money.
And you see that because you don't see what so-called moderate Muslims standing up and denouncing these attacks against Christians or Jews. I mean,
so what happens?
The media is not covered.
I never see that.
No, what happens when a moderate stands up and denounces these radicals? You know what a fatwa is? That means that some radical cleric in the Middle East said, it is okay, actually I want you to seek that person out and kill them. You will go to heaven if you kill them.
And
their families. And their families, yeah. So the news, there was a journalist in Seattle, Washington. Unknown. I mean, she was in Seattle, Washington. She made a commentary about a competition to ridicule Muhammad. That's one of the fundamental sins in Islam, is to ridicule Muhammad. Do you realize that the most powerful cleric in the Middle East, who just got back into Egypt, by the way, and they're kicking him out again because he made such a mess, from there, he issued a fatwa against this woman in Seattle, Washington, unknown in the world. You know what the FBI told her? We can't protect you. You're going to have to go into hiding. You know what? She disappeared.
Yeah. We don't know if she's
alive or dead, but she's not on the public square. Our government, who is one of their sole responsibilities to protect us, said we can't protect you. And that's a guy from the Middle East to a woman in Seattle, Washington. Citizen of the United States.
Inside the United States.
Well, you know, Salman Rushdie got attacked at the Netherlands. They killed him.
Yeah, there are several politicians in the Netherlands that have spoken out, and they have fought laws against them. So if they get too far out on the edge, these guys, the radical jihadis, their whole life is dedicated to attacking and killing the infidel. So there's guys that they can brainwash and say, you strap on a bomb, you go up and hug that guy and blow him to hell. Okay? You're going to go to heaven, he's done.
And they can befriend you for a while just to get intel, and boom, they kill you.
In Egypt, they have a big sign saying, Obama support terroristas. We don't want Obama here.
So even the Egyptians have figured out that they no longer trust us. So
but
we're on the wrong side.
Yes, but Obama is still giving armaments to the brothers who the terrorists to attack the military government in Egypt.
So
killing Christians, decapitated Christians, burning churches, killing people.
Well, they're even worse than that. Even today, if you look at some of the, I've been looking at these bullying laws in schools, and the Anti-Defamation League, and if you look under, some of that is such that they don't want you to profess your religious faith, that you're a Christian. But if you say something about Muslim, boy, they're on you real quick. But if you say anything about freedom, liberty, just recently they had the girl with the NRA picture, boom, they suspended her. So they're trying to call you that you're discriminating against them, you're a racist or whatever, to scare you.
Yes.
Again, where did they learn that? This guy. Teaming up with the radical 60s, the radical Islamics figured out, guess what the weakness of the American public is? You can freeze them, ridicule them, and attack them personally, and all of a sudden they'll back down.
Yeah, if you just say racist, boom.
Everybody shuts down. And so here in the Houston area, we would think that we're somewhat immune to that, wouldn't we? But of the Muslim Brotherhood here in Houston, do you know? CARE. CARE, Council of American and Islamic Relations. And if you go to their website, what you'll find is that they routinely meet with reporters from the Houston Chronicle. Why would they do that? They spread their propaganda. The other thing that they have on their website is, guess what? We have all kinds of problems with immigration in this country. You know what CARE does? They have lawyers set up to help Islamics in this country accelerate their citizenship. So there's lots of undercurrents that people need to pay attention to because it goes counter to our principles of government. Radical Islam, and in general Islam, is not compatible with freedom.
And the terrorists are crossing all the borders.
The terrorists are crossing borders in record numbers now. There's documented evidence of it at this point.
McCain knows that. There's many people told McCain about this. McCain doesn't care.
Doing what we're doing, we talk about voter registration, voter fraud, stuff like that. I'll take it one step further. There's such a thing as voter fear. That's why they don't vote people out of the office, because they're intimidated by certain people. I'm experiencing that in my own campaign. So, if we see you put money in his campaign, companies or individuals, whatever, that's going on right now today in my own campaign.
Oh, sure.
So
well, you look at that.
And they go, well, I'm sorry, we can't donate or anything, because if we do, we're afraid we're going to lose a contract. We're afraid we're going to lose business. That's happening right now. I'm experiencing that uphill battle today because I'm trying to do the right thing. And I'm trying to turn to the right people, but that's right here.
Look at Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A. Two cases in point. They try to do the right thing, so what does the progressive movement do? They boycott them and try to shut them down. Look at Fox News. What did they do when Glenn Beck was on there? They boycotted every one of his sponsors. They went after the sponsors. So if you're associated with this guy, if you advertise, in general, the sponsors, don't always get to choose when they put their commercials on. Didn't matter. They went after those sponsors and they said, you advertise on that show again, we will boycott your product. Sure. So they attack you based on your political beliefs or if you disagree with them. It is a personal vendetta. So if they see that you have a different, they'll go after whoever your donors are.
That's it. That's what they're doing. No. They're doing it right now. They've been doing it ever since it started.
Oh yeah.
And like I said, I have to just, do it in a different way, possibly, whatever. But most of them are just walk away. They said, we're afraid we'll lose our living, we'll lose our lifestyle. If we give to you anything, we're afraid we won't get a contract.
So the question to them should be, so if you lose your contract today or in 10 years, does it matter? You're going to lose it one way or the other because the corruption and the
it's just going to continue.
It's going to get worse,
right.
And eventually they're going to bleed whoever that is dry.
Yeah.
They're going to go back and want something from them. So
that's what they do. That's if they give you something. See, I won't take money from that kind of organization. Mm-hmm. Mine are voter person only, So if you take money from them, then they do expect a contract in return. But that's something I refuse to do. But there's companies that want to do something to help you, but they're, like I said, threatened by the other group, saying that, hey, if we see you doing this, then, or if we see you in the same crowd or wherever you're at, we're going to take action.
Yeah. Well, the Tea Party has learned kind of the hard way, I think, from 2010 and the last election cycle, that the name of the game in getting elected is the money. And the two-party system has really figured out a way to choke that money flow off. They control it, and they can use it as a weapon. So if you don't fall in line, they'll choke that funding off. Okay. So, get back to this real quick, because we're running out of time and I don't want to keep you guys too long. So, the ninth principle, the role of revealed law. This was, again, Blackstone. Again, what it said is that you could find the revealed law basically in the Holy Scriptures, the Bible. And what they found in general, this requires recognition again of God's supremacy. And where was the most prevalent document that had God's revealed law? The Ten Commandments. So why would you see that that's taken out of every state capital, every federal building in the country? Again, they want to break that connection between God's authority and providing us our rights. The more they take that away from the public arena, the further and further into the distant past that becomes in the human mind, in the American mind. Okay? So, the founders' 10th and 11th principles, the sovereignty of the people and who can alter the government. Alexander Hamilton, the fabric of the American empire ought to rest on the solid basis of the consent of the people. The streams of the national power ought to flow immediately from the pure original fountain of all legitimate authority. So, what's he trying to say? Is that the people are the master and the government is the servant. So, what is it that the media and the politicians try to do nowadays? And you see it very effective, and they want, why do you think, what's the participation rate in most elections? Is it 80%, 90%, 100%? Why? Most people think that their vote doesn't matter. No matter what they say or do, they're not going to get an outcome out of it. It's always going to stay the same. The Washington crowd or the political class tries to perpetuate that. And case in point. So, how many times in history have 1 million people went to march on Washington, D.C.? Not very many. And then, how many times was it actually captured on video? Not very many as well. So, when 1 million people, Tea Party, show up on Capitol Hill, and it gets like 5 seconds worth of news coverage, what is that trying to tell you? That your vote doesn't matter. Right? But that's the furthest thing from the truth. How many people does it take to change a movement, to create a movement, to change the direction of the culture? Do you know what percentage of the population? What percentage were the revolutionaries in the Revolutionary War?
About 3%?
20%.
20%?
20% of the colonial population was actually part of the revolution. In general, once you can get to that point of about 20% of the population, you can start to swing the culture one way or the other. What percentage of the country identifies Tea Party?
Maybe 70.
Pretty close. About 28%. It depends on which media outlet you're talking about. So, can they change the course of the culture? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they can. What would the media have you believe? No, they can't. They're just a bunch of whack jobs out on the fringe. That's not true. As long as you hold steadfast, you can change the course of the culture.
I think we have changed the conversation already.
Look at what they told Ted Cruz when he stood up and said, hey, I'm going to talk for 21 hours or until I can't stand any longer. It's not going to make any difference. What did happen? All of a sudden, the pressure on Boehner and Cantor was so intense, now Boehner is a believer. Does anybody believe that? No. The public opinion shifted so fast based on what Cruz did, Boehner had no choice but to fall in line. People can make a difference, and the founders truly believed that. And then, so, James Madison. These gentlemen must therefore be reminded of their error. They must be told that the ultimate authority, wherever the derivative may be found, resides in the people alone. So, 2010, what did the American public very loudly proclaim to Washington, D.C.? We do not like your direction, you change it now. What did they do? They ignored that completely. Kept right on down that track. Okay? So what did they do from 2010 to 2012? They used every political avenue and bureaucratic avenue to shut down that resistance through the IRS, through the propaganda media, everything else. They're avoiding this fact that the people have the ultimate authority in this government. It is a republican, a constitutional republic. What do you think is going to happen in this next go-around election in next year?
It is 2010.
I wish I knew.
It's going to be interesting.
If Ted Cruz can keep up the momentum, you're looking for a repeat of 2010.
Yeah.
What's happened is they found their stride again. They figured out, hey, everybody was getting attacked and kind of screwed over. We're not going to take that. We don't need the 501c3. We don't need all of this stuff. We're just going to go back to doing what we need to do. Some of these guys are going. Do you think Cornyn's going to be in office?
No.
He knows it. He sees the writing on the wall. They are afraid of the people. The people have to understand they have the ultimate power. They just have to get out and vote.
Did anybody hear Cornyn talk down?
Yeah.
Well,
I
You talking about Matt Patrick?
What happened?
A Matt Patrick show?
yeah.
That hurt, he hung up? He got mad.
He was not happy with that.
It was amazing. It was amazing that how he, I guess he made a quick image.
He does. Absolutely. He's got on with it for 10 years.
And so that goes back to they think they know better than we the people.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Dick Lugar. He didn't even have a residence in his own state. You know, when he ran.
Most of them live in Washington, D.C. They'll tell you they live in their state. They live in Washington, D.C.
But he was worse. He actually had no address.
I just don't understand that one.
So here's a fundamental principle that everybody needs to understand. This is a constitutional republic. It was made that way for a specific reason. How many democracies in history have been successful and for how long? Do you know? Zero. Zero democracies have lasted the test of time. What do they always end in?
War.
Civil war. Terror and bloodshed. Why? Because it is the rule of the mob. Nobody's rights are protected. Nobody's property is protected. Nobody's liberties are protected. Okay? So, when the president, a constitutional lawyer, gets on the public arena stage and says that this democracy is the preeminent democracy in the world, what should we do? We should laugh him off the stage. That is an insult to this country. This is a republic. And the difference is this. Democracies, according to Madison, democracies have been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and in general have been short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. You want to see a couple of democracies? Do you know what happens in Zimbabwe every day? Starvation and hunger. Where were they 30 years ago? They were the breadbasket of Africa. What happened? Robert Mugabe came in and said, hey, I want fairness and social justice for everybody. I'm seizing those guys' property and giving it to those guys. Guess what? These guys over here didn't know anything about farming. Now guess what? Everybody's equally poor and starving.
In Cuba, same thing.
Cuba, the same thing?
In my country happened that too.
Or even the Soviet Union. You know, same thing.
Oh, okay.
So, by the time they were done in Peru, do you know what the inflation rate was? In a democracy, or a communist democracy, a utopian society, what was the inflation rate by the time it was done?
5,000.
5,000%.
5,000%. We have a lot of money, we can buy bread.
The instant you got paid, you went straight to the grocery store to spend your money. Otherwise, if you waited the next day, you couldn't afford bread. That is a democracy. So, in a democracy, the people meet to exercise the government in person. In a republic, they assemble and administer it by their representatives and agents. A democracy, consequently, must be confined to a small spot. A republic may extend over a large region. So, what happens is, the people in Texas don't necessarily agree with people in New York, surprisingly enough. So, what they set up, the founders foresaw that. They had an idea that the United States would grow into something larger, based on what they had set in motion. They believed that the only way, they foresaw that we would get to be a nation of about 300 million people. The only way for a true government to continue to function, that they believed, based on history, they had found several examples of representative democracies that had, or representative republics that had succeeded for over 200 years. The only reason that they failed was because they were conquered by the Roman Empire. So it wasn't because they failed from within, they were conquered by an external enemy. So they believed that the republic was the only way to perpetuate liberty and freedom. But that was based on moral and virtuous people and moral and virtuous leaders. Okay? So there's some caveats to that republic theory. 13th principle, human frailty, the greatest danger to people's rights. Alexander Hamilton. For it is truth, with the experience of all the ages has attested, that the people are commonly most in danger when the means of injuring their rights are in the possession of those whom they entertain the least suspicion. And then George Washington. Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire is a dangerous servant and a fearful master. So a couple of things to keep in mind in modern times. You ask a question. So, the vast majority of the American people don't see danger on the horizon. No. If you go out and poll most of the people, you ask them what they think of Obama and the Republicans in Washington, D.C., they would never do anything to hurt this republic, or this democracy, as they would say. They don't perceive danger now. They are so numb to it. That is when your rights are most in jeopardy. You think it can't happen here. My brother works in Washington, D.C. He voted for Obama and that whole administration. He's a political science major. He cannot distinguish the difference between socialism and a constitutional republic. I can tell you that right now. He would articulate that everything that the government does is for the good of the people. And he believes that, by and large, that the government knows better than the average person. He articulates it to me every time I argue with him in email. So I could argue.
That same family?
My father would have hadn't already passed away. But one thing I want to point out here is in most of Obama's speeches, pay attention to the words, because he is 180 degrees opposite to George Washington. Obama would advocate that their government only does good for the people. Look at what the first president said. Government is not reason. It is force. So what does that mean? Government enacts things by the gun. Says, I have the guns, I can tell you what to do. Would you pay taxes if the government wasn't going to come and take you and put you in jail? Probably not. So what they do is they threaten you to put you in jail. Pay your taxes or I'm going to put you in jail. Okay? So it is force. Fundamentally, people have to recognize that government is force. And it is difficult to control. That is why the founders advocated small government. Because it is, once it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger, it's what you see now. You cannot control the beast. There's only a couple of ways. Revolution or starve it. guess what? We're getting ready to starve it. And not by its own choice. It's going to go bankrupt.
Hey, Jim, when you say government, you know, there's different levels of government. We got state, we got county, and then we have federal.
Yep.
So here, I would assume they're talking about the federal government.
Technically, they would argue that all government, they want to keep it all small. Because even a state government, look at the state of California, the state of New York. Now the people of California and New York voted for that, so that's, the founders said, if they want to vote for it in a state government, that's their choice. Then what happens? Where are the people of California going? Exactly, why? Because our state government is small. It's not as intrusive. Now it has some bad things and it's kind of going the wrong direction, but in all the country, there's a handful of states that still have freedom in their front sights. California has them way back down there.
And could that be because the people who voted in California didn't have to have a driver's license?
Yes, yeah.
They said a lot of them weren't actually even citizens.
Well, look what California has done. They put all of their taxes as a vote by majority. So they've ingrained it into their constitution, their taxes, and it was voted on the majority. So most of the people in California don't pay taxes. They said, yeah, I'll take that tax. I'm not paying it. So guess what? All the businesses, Carl Jr.'s, they moved out of California. That little hamburger stand over there, they moved their headquarters to Texas.
And you find a lot of businesses now are moving out of the United States.
Yes.
And I know...
Why do you think they're moving out of the United States?
Taxes. The government...
An even more fundamental issue than that. Because what has Obama shown over the last 5 years?
Regulations.
This one, property rights. Private property rights do not exist in this country as far as the federal government is concerned. When he seized General Motors, and make no mistakes, that's what he did. He seized General Motors. What did he do to the property holders of General Motors? He told every one of them, you're at the back of the line. I will do with this company what I choose. And guess who got the lion's share? The very people that bankrupted General Motors now control 70% of it, the unions. So is General Motors any better off than they were before? No. They have not enough cash flow to operate on a daily basis. If the government were to withdraw and sell all their shares right now, General Motors would collapse into bankruptcy again. But what he did is he told the American business owner, I will seize your property and you have no recourse. You know who some of the biggest property holders were in General Motors? Indiana teachers unions. So who did he screw over?
Yeah, because
teachers unions. Yeah. It went to the Supreme Court. What does the Supreme Court say? It's okay.
Yeah.
He's got the right to do that.
Yeah, the president.
So, is it constitutional? Did they ask the question, is it constitutional? No. What they asked, is it okay? They said yeah. So, property rights, a very important principle, and understanding what that means.
In my country, the government took our savings from the bank. All our savings. Peru. Peru, South America. Yeah.
Actually, they've had two situations where they've gone through, in essence, a communist and a Marxist. And it ended badly both times.
What's going to happen when we go busted? They're going to take all of ours same way?
They're already looking at it. They're already looking at all these 401ks that are out there in the United States.
Everything we work for to put up.
Exactly. It's already studied now.
Yeah, they're already studying
countries. The Obama's medicine here.
Let me.
He's putting mechanisms in place to seize everybody's return.
They just start getting coffee cans and a shovel.
Don't do it with this kind of stuff.
Well,
that's if we don't put you out of the pasture so far.
So this is, unfortunately, this is kind of where I left off last time with free market economy. So, to your question about what's going to happen, and we'll wrap it up here with this. Free market economy. So there's a couple of things. We are originally intended to be a capitalistic society. Free market economy. The right to try, the right to buy, the right to sell, the right to fail. That is no longer what we are. The government tells you who the winners and the losers are. They regulate you out of existence if they don't like you.